single day, like I've always done and always will.
Passing these bills on the floor, making yet another stand.
Welcome to this week's edition of New York Now. I'm Chantel Destra. This week, Governor Kathy Hochul made history by signing a one-year moratorium on data centers, making New York the first state in the nation to impose such a restriction on the growing artificial intelligence industry. Data centers serve as large facilities that essentially store computers to help with the infrastructure needed to train and develop AI services. At a press conference, Hochul underscored the many risks associated with data centers and what she hopes to accomplish with the moratorium.
Artificial intelligence is changing the way we work, the way we learn, the way we communicate, the way we do business. And it has sparked a heated debate over the rapid construction of massive, energy-guzzling infrastructure that is needed to power the industry. These hyperscale AI data centers consume enormous amounts of power, truly threatening to outpace our grid's capacity, and they drive up costs for local ratepayers.
Per the executive chamber, the moratorium will be in effect for 1 year and will allow the state to come up with a framework for regulations. We'll continue to bring you updates on New York's approach to AI right here on the show. Now turning to another important topic. It's been 1 year since the implementation of SUNY Reconnect. This is the state program that allows adults interested in higher education to get free tuition and support. We sat down with SUNY Chancellor John B Jr. to recap the 1 year anniversary of that program and the level of financial support needed from the state. Here's that conversation. Thank you so much for joining us back on the show, Chancellor.
Excited to talk with you.
Now, SUNY is celebrating the first official year of SUNY Reconnect, the program that provides adult students free tuition to attend community college. Chancellor, can you tell us about the program's impact 1 year since its implementation?
Sure. It's been such a successful year. We have about 5,600 students who are participating in Reconnect, but the message that if you're an adult 25 to 55, you can go to community college tuition free, that your books, fees, supplies are going to be covered. That message helped us grow community college enrollment overall. Community college enrollment was up 5% last fall, and it's really a life-changing opportunity for students.
Yeah, and I know you just wrapped up a tour of all of the SUNY Reconnect campuses. So what did you hear from students about how the program is impacting their lives? What were some of the most memorable moments from your tour?
Sure. Yeah, so I visited all 29 of our campuses that are participating. And at each campus, I had a chance to talk with students, faculty, staff, and the students just told these incredible stories about how SUNY Reconnect had changed their path in life. Folks who were working in fast food, barely making ends meet, struggling to support their families. Now they're in a program that will lead to a degree in nursing. They'll be making 80, 90 grand a year. It's going to change the economic trajectory for their entire family. I heard from students a sense that they finally feel like government is working for them. You know, folks who maybe have been disappointed in the past, but now they feel like government, thanks to this program that Governor Hochul initiated, is helping them get a leg up, get an opportunity in a complicated economy. It was great to hear people share how welcoming the campuses have been, the level of support that they're getting, not only from faculty, but from staff, advisors, the folks who work on financial aid. It really was inspiring to hear the difference this program is making.
Were there any challenges in the first year of SUNY Reconnect? And if there were, how do you plan to take these lessons into the next academic year?
I'd say the two biggest challenges, one, making sure people know about it. I would ask students, how'd you hear about it? And they'd say, well, maybe they saw a news clip or they saw something on social media or they heard about it from a friend or family member. But we know there are millions of New Yorkers who would benefit from this program. So we're excited about the 5,600, but we know there could be so many more students. So we're going to continue to work to get the word out. Governor Hochul included some funding in this year's allocation to support that outreach effort. And then the other challenge is just continue to grow the number of spots in these high demand programs. We've got to recruit additional faculty. We've got to invest in the equipment and the space for students, whether it's in nursing or advanced manufacturing or in cybersecurity or in renewable energy. So we're doing that work, and we're fortunate that Governor Hochul and the legislature have provided operating aid increases for community colleges over the last 3 years. It's the first time that's happened in decades, which is helping us grow the capacity of these programs.
That's incredible. And I know beginning this fall, SUNY Reconnect will actually expand to include SUNY's bachelor degree granting universities in addition to community college. So can you help us understand how this will help adults currently considering higher education? And what is the tangible impact of this change?
Sure. So we've got a number of campuses that are technology campuses. So SUNY Canton, SUNY Cobleskill, SUNY Morrisville, and Alfred State. And there are opportunities for students to pursue associate degrees at those comprehensive colleges. And this will now make it possible for students to choose those associate degree programs, attend for free through SUNY Reconnect, and get similar opportunities to the students at our community colleges. So for certain geographies of the state, like I think about where SUNY Canton is, they really are the functional community college for their immediate region. So this is just expanding access to opportunity for more New Yorkers.
And with this change, what type of awareness initiatives will SUNY implement to ensure that these interested students are in the know about the expanded program? I know that you mentioned Governor Kathy Hochul included funding in the budget, but what is the strategy from SUNY?
Yeah, so at one level, it's marketing, right? It's making sure that there are digital ads, for example, that people will see when they're on Instagram or Facebook. But there's also a lot of work that's about relationship building, working directly with employers, with local community-based organizations and nonprofits. We're working with the Department of Labor to make sure that when folks are unemployed and looking for a job, they know this could be a pathway to that next job. We're working with workers' comp to make sure that if somebody gets injured at their job and they may need to do a different kind of job, they know Reconnect is there as a path to changing their career. So we're going to continue to do that work. Each of our campuses is doing a ton of outreach as well. And I appreciate this opportunity to share with you about the program. We sometimes hear from students, I heard about it, I thought it was too good to be true. It's free and it covers tuition, fees, books, and supplies. How could that be? And so we have to reassure folks, no, this is real. This is Governor Hochul and New York State stepping up to help you get a path to opportunity and economic mobility.
And looking at the years to come, how would you like to see the SUNY Reconnect program grow and expand even more?
Look, I think there's an opportunity to identify additional fields. This year, we are also adding emergency management, air traffic control, logistics. The nursing programs are being expanded within Reconnect to allow students who already have a degree in another area to come back for a nursing degree because we have such a shortage of nurses in New York State and around the country. So we're going to continue to identify new areas for Reconnect. And look, over the long term, we see this as part of a broader message that there is a place at SUNY for every New Yorker. Whatever you're interested in, whatever you want to study, wherever you are in your career, we can help you advance toward your dreams.
And I want to get into the funding for SUNY. I know the last time we connected, you underscored the many infrastructure issues across SUNY campuses, totaling about $10 billion, and you were hopeful that the state budget would help fund some of those issues. So can you help us understand where SUNY landed in terms of funding for these projects after this year's state budget was enacted?
Yeah, so the good news is there was an increase in investment in capital this year, which is very helpful. Historically, we've received about $550 million a year in capital support for critical maintenance. This year, it's $795 million. So that is tremendous progress. We are very grateful to Governor Hochul and the legislature for that additional support. That said, we still have the $10 billion critical maintenance backlog. And so we'll be back come next legislative session, again, making the case that it's in the state's long-term interest to invest in the capital needs at SUNY. SUNY is a key player in economic development in every region of the state, whether you're talking about growing the semiconductor industry and the workforce that Micron needs, or you're talking about growing the battery technology industry in the southern tier, or you're talking about meeting the many demands in the healthcare field. SUNY's the answer. But to provide students with those great opportunities, we need up-to-date facilities. And so we're going to continue to make the case for those capital investments.
So from your purview, what level of funding is needed in the years to come to ensure that the state is proactively addressing critical maintenance and infrastructure issues outside of the ones that require the $10 billion in funding? Do you have a figure in mind?
Well, certainly we made the case that the state should commit to a 5-year capital plan for SUNY, a 5-year plan to address that $10 billion critical maintenance backlog, but also a 5-year plan to invest in research capacity. We were fortunate in this year's budget, we had $100 million for research capital. That's going to help us to grow areas that will drive the future of the state's economy. Things like quantum technology research at Stony Brook, for example, or the work we're doing in our Brain Institute across our academic medical centers and our research universities. We need more investment there as well, on top of the critical maintenance funding, particularly in an environment where the federal government, unfortunately, has been very slow to get research dollars out to universities.
And lastly, looking at your State of the University address you delivered a few weeks ago, you certainly highlighted a number of various policy initiatives central to your vision of SUNY, including expanded career services, voter registration efforts, and a focus on AI. So can you walk us through your mindset leading up to the address this year, and how are you hoping your address shapes the SUNY experience heading into the fall semester later this year?
The great news is we've got great momentum at SUNY. SUNY really is on the move. I started as chancellor 3.5 years ago, and in that 3.5 years, we've seen 3 years of back-to-back enrollment growth for the first time in 15 years. We've seen tremendous investment from Governor Hochul and the state legislature. We've implemented the ASAP and ACE wraparound support program to help the students who start, finish, with a meaningful degree or credential ready to succeed in the economy. We've launched SUNY Reconnect. We launched our Empire State Service Corps, where now 1,000 students a year will be able to be paid to do 300 hours a year of service work, developing their own skills while contributing to the community. So we've got all these great initiatives, a ton of work I've mentioned around research that's happening throughout the SUNY system. And so I really see the State of the University address as an opportunity to say, what's next? How are we going to build on that success and momentum? And so we talked about things like our goal of an internship for every SUNY undergraduate, the investments we've been able to make, and the next phase of investments and expansion of that work. We talked about our civics and service agenda. This fall, we will have a civil discourse general education requirement for all SUNY undergraduates, which reflects our commitment to developing not just the next generation workforce, but the next generation of citizens to preserve our democracy. So it was a great celebration of the momentum we have and an opportunity to look ahead to what's next.
Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today, but thank you so much for joining us on the show, Chancellor.
Thanks so much. Great to see you.
And we were speaking with SUNY Chancellor John B. King Jr. A recent audit from the state's comptroller office found substantial issues with the responsiveness and effectiveness of the state's domestic violence hotline. For example, the report showed that about 1 in 5 test calls to the hotline went unanswered. In this next segment, David Lombardo of WCNY's The Capitol Press Room sat down with Kelli Owens, the Executive Director of the State Office for the Prevention of Domestic Violence, to understand the issues with the hotline and what the state is doing to better support survivors. Here's that conversation.
Well, Kelli, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
One of the big headlines from a recent state comptroller's audit was that not all the phone calls and digital communications to the state's domestic violence hotline, at least in the first half of 2025, got connected successfully. One review found 6% of calls were not connected. How does that review compare to your expectations for the hotline and its responsiveness?
Well, let me tell you my expectations just overall is that we're here to help survivors. I'm going to share a little bit of personal story with you. I started this work at the local YWCA, and I started in community relations and that kind of stuff. But everybody at a local provider has to become trained to be an advocate. And I had to become an advocate. One particular night, it was Christmas Eve, we got a call to go to the hospital to pick up a mom who had been badly beaten and her son. Her son was about the same age as my kids. And the little boy came in and the mom came in. The little boy had a broken leg and he was in his Christmas pajamas. And his main concern that night was whether or not Santa would be able to find him. So when I think about the work that we do, and the work we do at OPDV, the work that the locals do, the work that the hotline does, no call should ever be missed. And that's what I remember every time I think about this audit and how we can do so much better. And that's what drives me. It's what I expect of the system. If you're going to do this work, it's heartbreaking work. It's either going to break your heart every day or it's going to turn you to stone. It's turned me to stone. But and if you come to this where you think we can't save everybody, then don't do this work.
Well, clearly the intentions are there. So when you think about this audit and this, focusing on the hotline in particular, what safeguards or institutional checks and balances can be in place or are now in place to ensure that, one, people's calls and text messages and web communications are being responded, and two, that people are getting responded to in the languages that they need to, which is another concern raised by the audit.
We have done a lot of changes to our contract with the provider, and in that we have required them to do their own testing as well as we're doing quality testing ourselves now. So we're calling and we're texting and we're chatting and we're doing it in different languages to make sure that things are operating the way they should. I will say this, I think that the hotline, so in New York State, there's the national hotline, there's the state hotline, there's the New York City hotline, and then every local provider has a hotline. I think it's time to change the way we do business. And that means that we are looking at OPDV to try to figure out, can there be a new way to do this? It's very antiquated in the way that we do it. Doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just I think that there's a better way for us to do this work together as a state and really get people to the places they need for the help as quickly as possible. And that might mean a technology solution. That might mean a lot of different things. But we've really started that process to look at how do we do this better across the state? Because it's a lot of duplication of service as well.
Well, are you envisioning one door for people to walk through, so to speak? Because while I could understand how that maybe allows you to coordinate and organize things, the argument against that would be have as many doors as possible for people to possibly get into the system.
Yeah, and I think that there's an answer to that. I think when I was at the local, people called the local hotline, right? And the state hotline serves a purpose, but the state hotline should be trying to get people, and we are, to the local as quickly as possible. So that's the system that we're looking at, and over the next couple of years to really try to find out how do we do this better.
Well, I want to turn to another element of the audit, which has to do with the implementation and oversight of the state's Enough is Enough initiative, which is supposed to address sexual violence on college campuses. And the audit found that campuses weren't necessarily fully living up to their program expectations as part of the grants that they get from your office. Additionally, I've got a couple years worth of interviews for the Capitol Press Room where there are activists saying that dozens of college campuses are not in compliance with the mandates of this initiative, not necessarily partnering with the organizations that they're supposed to be. Where do you think stand now with the implementation of this work?
Before this audit, we really started thinking about what does enough, and we worked well with the advocates about what does the future of Enough is Enough look like. And you know, the Enough is Enough law has the state ed, who's in charge of the enforcement piece, and then us, who works with the advocate community to make sure that there are connections to those college campuses. This year, there's a required connection between the college campuses and the provider. So the college has to say, we're working with these people, and there's an MOU in place that requires them to do that.
And state ed's going to be double checking all that and making sure
Well, we're going to check that.
Okay.
We're going to check it. State ed does their stuff on the Enough is Enough side. Our monitoring will be around that. Our contracts are with the local providers, not with the colleges. So our job is to make sure that the providers are doing what they say they should do, which is hard sometimes when you don't have a cooperative college campus. And we're going to really step up our efforts to make sure that we're facilitating some of those relationships that have not been great in the past.
One of the things that I felt like was not necessarily emphasized in the controller's take on this was resources. And the DV world is not necessarily first, second, third, or fourth when it comes to priorities. So when you think about the range of services that are highlighted in this audit, how does a lack of resources, or maybe not all of the resources that you might think are deserved, impact all of this work and the oversight that you do in your office?
Yeah, you know, gender-based violence is in New York State funded across 6 state agencies. And there is money out there, but it sometimes is competitively bid. So DV and sexual assault providers are competing against other victim services agencies, or they're competing against each other. And that is a system that OPDV has been talking about since I've been at OPDV, that we need to really think about how do we fund domestic and sexual violence services in the state of New York? How do we make those federal funds that come in, which now, you know, are federal funds coming in, and the state dollars work together in a way that is more impactful for sexual and domestic violence service providers? We continue to say that. We continue to try to work with our sister state agencies to get them to collaborate around how do we really fund and how do we look at domestic and sexual violence services, which also leads us to model policy.
How is this policy used now, and are there limitations based on when it was written?
Sure. The last time it was updated was 1998.
That was a heck of a Yankees team, like I said.
And it's not bad policy. It's just not inclusive policy, and it doesn't touch all of the systems in which a domestic violence or sexual violence victim may be operating. There's a lot of concentration on the criminal justice system, but we also got to talk about housing. And what does housing model policy look like when it comes to domestic violence? What does health policy look like? What does education policy look like? What are we doing in the prevention area? And what should that look like if we're doing it? So that model policy has got to be updated. It should drive how the state looks at and funds and develops programs around domestic and sexual violence. We're also working with the counties, because it's supposed to be a county domestic violence policy. So there's a state policy and a county policy. We are having great success at the counties. We do our regional councils, and a lot of folks who weren't around in 1998 are saying, what, this is great, why haven't we been using this? So it's really gonna be transformational once we get everybody on the same page. We're hoping it will be transformational once we get everybody on the same page. The local communities are really, 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 really into it and trying to decide, okay, how do we really do the work that's outlined here, and what do we need to change in the model policy? We're very excited about it.
Is this gonna be, though, a culture change for some counties? Obviously, it sounds like some are rip-roaring ready to go, but others might have fond memories of 1998 and that Yankees team.
But yeah.
Okay, but yeah, so I mean, is this going to be a big deal for some counties? Are you going to have to push some people along?
Yeah, I think what will be interesting is, you know, in the 1990s, our response to domestic and sexual violence has been a criminal justice response. And we invest that way. We invested in, you know, prosecution, we invested in police departments, we invested in shelter-based services. This model policy will hopefully help people understand that there's things that happened before that we need to be addressing, and how are we building systems there? How are we talking to schools? How are we doing healthy relationships? How are we doing all of those different things that keep us out of that crisis mode? So I do think there's going to be a shift, and I think that some of those folks that have traditionally been in charge are going to see a little bit of a shift away from, okay, yes, we got to have a strong, robust criminal justice system. That has to work, but so does the housing system for a DV or SA victim.
So then what do you see as the practical effect of these broader changes on the consumers of the system, the survivors of domestic violence and their family members? What does this actually mean for them if you're successful in implementing this culture shift?
It will mean that they don't have to worry about jumping from system to system. It will mean that the communities are coordinated around their response to domestic and gender-based violence. So if you're telling your story to an advocate, you're telling your story to the high-risk team in that area, and you don't have to tell it again to 7 other people. They don't care that the criminal justice system works this way, the court system this way, and advocates work. They don't care. All they want is help, and we're hoping that with a coordinated community response, that will be the way that they feel the system treats them.
Well, Kelli, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave, and I always appreciate you having me on.
Well, that does it for this edition of New York Now. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next week.
Funding for New York Now is provided by WNET,